Welcome to this week's episode. In this one, my wife Carrie Hambach and I have a conversation. This episode was Carrie's idea. She's an avid listener of the podcast, and she's been telling me that I need to put myself out there more, that I need to reciprocate more with guests. For the record, the reason I don't put myself out there more in these conversations is because they aren't about me. They're about the guests, and their stories, and their experiences. At any rate, I was all for having a conversation with Carrie. The episode turned out to be a bit of a compromise. We get into some behind-the-scenes stories about the podcast, and what it was like putting together the 4 issues of Crude magazine. And in return, I ask her some relationship questions. Here's where I give the company men a shout out. These are the people who have subscribed to the Crude Patreon for $50 or more. Trina Duber, Seward Brewing Company, The Grind Coffee Shop in Juneau, Derek Adolph, Blue and Gold Board Shop, Sharon Liska, Alaska Surf Adventure, and Aquila Space. Thank you to all the Patreon subscribers. This podcast wouldn't be possible without you. If you subscribe to the Crude Patreon, thank you. Your money helps keep these conversations going. So if you enjoy these conversations, you can subscribe at www.patreon.com/Crude Magazine. That's patreon.com/Crude Magazine. And pick the subscription tier that works for you. Okay, on to this week's conversation with my wife, Carrie Hambach. Carrie has been there since the beginning of Crude, and is just as much responsible for any of its success as I am. She has always been on the Crude masthead as managing editor, because, as we joke, she manages me, the editor. But realistically, she does so much more. She has always proofread and given feedback on my articles. She helps with business decisions. And she's always there to suggest questions and give praise and constructive criticism about the podcast. Everything she does adds more perspective and ultimately makes the content better. On October 25th, 2013, she packed me a lunch and wrote me a letter on the day I was quitting my job at the time, so that I could work on Crude full-time. In that letter, she said, "Happy Friday, Codeman. I know it's a bit scary for both of us to be so financially unstable at the moment, but I know deep down this was the right thing for you to do. No matter what, we will get by. We won't have to look back and wonder, what if? I love you and trust in our futures. Love, Carrie." P.S. We're out of Ziploc bags. I love you, Carrie. This red light right here, it means we're recording.
Okay, fire it up.
Crude conversations. Listen more, then you talk.
Go to work.
So how does it feel to be on the podcast? Are you weirded out?
Yeah, I'm completely weirded out.
Okay, well, how would you want to start this then?
Well, the theory behind the podcast, this episode, is that I get to interview the podcaster. So, I'm going to start this off with, why a podcast?
What do you mean, why a podcast?
Well, you wanted to do print,
Mm-hmm.
and you have a website.
Mm-hmm.
So why did you move to a podcast?
So why a podcast? Okay. Yeah, sure. Let's keep it rolling. Carrie's giving me the go on signal. So a podcast. The reason I like how you're smiling.
I'm just ready to hear it.
So the reason I did a podcast, or I gravitated toward podcasting, is because journalism is changing so much, as you've heard me talk about so many different times. And magazine articles take a long time to write. So like anywhere between, say, a 1,500 to 2,000 or 4,000 word article, usually, or not usually, but in the past, were able to sustain journalists like, say, Joan Didion, or, you know, those old school 1960s or even 1970s journalists. And now that just doesn't exist anymore. You can't make a living wage off of working or writing for like your local alt weekly. They don't pay that much. They're not able to pay that much because not that many people are picking them up. And so with the podcast, what I realized was I was able to produce meaningful content on a weekly basis, with these conversations. Is that answer okay?
It's a B minus.
B minus? What does an A plus answer sound like?
I don't know, more thoughtful.
More thoughtful?
I'm just joking.
Okay. Well, I still love writing articles. I remember actually sitting out on our porch at our house last summer, and you were asking me if I miss writing, and like you were just not satisfied with my answer. I'm like, I feel like I'm writing way more now with the podcast, with the questions and the research and everything. And that just wasn't good enough for you. You're like, oh, no.
So that wasn't a B minus. That was a C minus back then.
Yeah, exactly. It was the worst answer you can imagine.
I expect more from you. Well, I remember back from when you were putting the magazines together, there was a lot more to it than just writing.
Mm-hmm.
You were having to wrangle people, layout, and all that stuff. And you don't have to do that with a podcast.
Yeah.
Is that also part of the draw?
Definitely. I think that, you know how frustrating it was for me to try to wrangle all those people.
Yes.
And to edit those articles by people who are not traditionally writers.
Myself included.
Yeah, yourself included. But I loved it.
That's why I only wrote the one article, because I was like, fuck this guy.
he's an okay husband. He's an asshole as an editor.
Yeah. I quit.
Yeah, you were not stoked.
No, you're a dick. I had a full-time job and I came home to a job.
Yeah, no, and I understood that. I was still pretty green, still pretty early on in the process. But that's what's beautiful about the podcast is I only ever have to rely on myself. So, I'm able to do the research, like all the hours of research that I'm pretty manic about, and then simultaneously writing those questions. And then I'm in charge of the editing process. So it's just all on me. So I don't have to rely on anybody else. One thing that you brought up pretty early on is nobody is going to be as passionate about this as I am. And it's like futile to keep looking.
Well, it's your project.
Yeah. But the way that I was always kind of pursuing it was the same way that I found out the Anchorage Press used to be run with like the old guard that they had there. And people were just so excited to be a part of that newspaper that they did it for free. They were just excited to be a part of it. And I only experienced that maybe a few times with Crude, like with Whitney Branshaw. Like she was just excited. She still is excited to be a part of it.
Yeah. It's very easy to find excited people in a drunken conversation at parties.
Totally.
And they're just like, oh yeah, dude, I'll totally do it.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean that on Monday morning they're like, yeah, I'll get you that 2,000 word essay.
Well, that's something that we were talking about this morning when we were jokingly had our pre-podcast and we were getting ready, is the idea of like people with ideas and then people who like follow through with those ideas. And people who follow through with ideas generally are very annoyed and frustrated by people who are just ideas people. They're like the Friday or Saturday night people that you drink with, and they're like, oh my God, this would be so cool. I'm totally down, dude.
Yeah.
And then like you said, Monday rolls around and you're just like, where is it? It's like, oh dude,
I said what?
I was taking shots. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Is that when the Shotskis?
Yeah. When that busted out.
Oh, gross. Okay. So I want to move on from that.
Okay.
So what were some of the unforeseen obstacles of podcasting that you have come across, like the radio?
Oh, yeah.
Things of that nature. And I also have a second part for this question.
Okay. So the radio feedback.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Which
just,
I would never have thought of.
Yeah, it's just learning new stuff about audio.
So enlighten our guests with you've never told me that radio feedback will sometimes happen.
And sometimes it's stronger than others. So like,
No, you got to say it from the beginning, like what you were hearing in your headphones.
So radio feedback is basically when you're literally getting, like, you're hearing the radio out of the headphones as you're trying to podcast. And what I eventually did was I called Mammoth Music here in Anchorage, and I was like, what's going on? Like, is there any way to get rid of this stuff? And they said that it is a common occurrence in Anchorage that you'll get radio feedback because the city was built so quickly that the electrical wires are like closer.
Like the towers?
The underground stuff, that feeds the city with electricity are just higher or closer to the surface. And so what they suggested was that outside of the studio, you get like a pole, like a big like metal rod, and then that will somehow like redirect or keep the feedback from actually hitting, your personal airwaves. It all sounds very weird, but I was like, oh, okay. So what they suggested was to just move wires around. Just keep moving these cords.
Shuffle them?
Yeah, just can't. Yeah,
kick them around the floor.
Exactly. I mean, that's what we do. That's what I do for the podcast. Is like if I'm getting a lot of radio feedback, I just start moving things around, and and then eventually I hear the radio less and less.
My other part of that question was having to listen to yourself and edit yourself. How did you work on your voice?
I don't know if I worked on it. I
feel like I've listening to your first podcast and listening to recent ones because I'm an avid listener to the podcast.
Thank you, Carrie.
Well, what kind of wife would I be? Your voice has changed in the way you enunciate words.
Oh yeah, actually.
And what have you picked up from other people?
So
and I'm terrified as to what you're going to hear when you edit this.
Okay, so there was a couple things in there. So the first thing was my own voice and kind of how I got used to it. So when I was doing the articles, like just doing print articles for magazines and things like that, I would always record my audio. So I'd have like, my little audio recorders. I'd always like, if it was a phone interview, I'd just set it up next to the phone, have the phone on speakerphone, ask my question. But yeah, I hated the sound of my voice, but I was always like really excited to be able to get stuff verbatim because my mind isn't the greatest. My memory isn't the greatest. And so I'd be like, oh, I'm just so happy to have all this stuff verbatim. And then I'd transcribe it. And so I spent a lot of time with my own voice and like that self-loathing is dissipated pretty much all of it. One thing that I really hated was how I would like spin out. I'd be trying to get to a point and instead of just sitting here and collecting my thoughts, I'd just start stuttering everywhere. And you helped me out with that. I remember we were shooting a promotional video for Crude and I just kept getting like so caught up, and we were filming it in our living room. And
the one where you're sitting in the chair?
Yeah.
In front of the windows?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
And I was just getting so frustrated, like so mad at myself.
Yeah,
and
you're even reading from a piece of paper.
Yeah, I just couldn't do it, you know? And so that first day I was like, okay, let's just try again tomorrow. Like I can't do this right now. So the next day you're like, I thought about this. Go in the kitchen, like chill, have some water or have a drink and read the first chapter of Harry Potter. And I want you to read it out loud. And
oh yeah, I did. I had you read out loud.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do remember that. Yeah.
And honestly, it was like such a pivotal moment where I was like just reading and enunciating. And I remember you were in the bathroom and you were like, say that sentence again, like just yelling back at me, enunciate, enunciate.
Like a dictator.
It was like my version of the King's Speech.
No, go back.
Yeah, go back. So yeah, that was super helpful. And then I remember mentioning to you, like, I don't know if you wrote this down, but I just remembered something funny that I do. when I'm writing questions down, like in my whole research process, as I'm reading my questions, and then especially as I'm recording, I have this technique where I open my mouth like really wide like, when I'm enunciating.
I remember you told me that.
Yeah, where it's just ridiculous. And I was just so frustrated with myself while recording one intro that I was like, maybe this will freaking work. You know, like.
Yes, that was the question. I was trying to remember what it was that I wrote down at work. Because he told me, like, I open my mouth really wide.
And it's ridiculous. Like, it's such a personal thing where, like, it's so private that I'm like, yeah, exactly. And I think that's probably a technique, but I've never had, like, any speech classes or anything like that. So I've had to kind of teach myself these different things.
Oh, that's your first speech class lesson is read Harry Potter.
Yeah, read anything, really.
Well, I mean, because that's like kind of a thing. Like, it's easy to read in your head, and we can tumble over words and we still get the meaning, but to actually read them and enunciate them and convey something to people, that's a completely different game.
For sure. I mean, that's why I spend so much time on my questions is I'm literally looking for, like, sometimes I'll change an adjective out for another adjective or a noun or whatever to be able to convey exactly what I mean. You know?
I don't know how many times I write emails and I'm like, I got to say this out loud.
Yeah.
And see if it actually sounds how I think it sounds in my head. And you're just like, oh, that just doesn't work.
That sounds terrible.
I sound like a complete asshole. I need to put a thank you in here and a please and a comma.
An exclamation mark.
Yeah. Smiley face. Winky eye.
I always joke with you about how Kitchens, our cat, is like one of my editors because she'll be sitting on like the love seat when I'm on the couch and I'll just be like talking to her. I'm like, does that sound okay? You know, like I seem like a crazy cat person. Yeah. I'm like, that's a good sign.
She's like, no.
Yeah.
She's like, scratch that. Sounds like garbage.
But I feel like she has like genuinely helped me out with so many articles and so many podcasts because, like, I mean, it always helps to have like another just beating heart around you when you're like workshopping things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's why my mom bought you that book.
Which one?
Writers and their cats.
Or
something
yeah.
like that.
And it's all a bunch of stories about writers and their cats.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You fit the mold.
Yeah. No, I love that book. It's fun.
You got 2 cats.
Yeah.
And you're basically a cat. Okay, so.
You said I was basically a cat. What do you mean by that?
You know exactly what I mean by that.
Yeah, but listeners don't.
Okay, you're a homebody. You like to be alone.
I hate loud noises.
You hate loud noises. You get mad when there's like road work going on. You like to be warm. You have jammy pants. I don't know. You need to be well fed and watered. I don't know. You're just a cat. Like when you need things, you really need them. It's just like, but you're also self-sustaining. Like a cat. Like they're just like, oh, fuck. I don't need you. Like, go away.
Well, that's why I like cats is because
they leave you alone. You don't like neediness.
Yeah.
Like a dog is way too needy for you. They're just like, play with me, play with me, play with me. And then you're just going to throw the ball and hope they don't come back.
Just forever.
I mean, you like dogs for about 10 minutes and then you're just like, fuck off.
I like dogs though.
No, yeah. Like I just said, for like 10 minutes and then you throw the ball and hope they don't come back.
But maybe I just need like a lap dog.
You talking about a cat again.
Yeah, that's true.
You don't even like it when Kitchens wants to sit next to you.
No,
you
I don't like it.
You told me last night Kitchens was good today because she knew her place and it was like a foot away from you, but she was still within your vicinity. That's such a cat thing. You're like, I like your presence, but not too close. Mm-hmm. You like everything in arm's length.
Geez, I wonder if that says something about me on a psychological level.
Oh, completely. I don't know how it couldn't.
Like what? What do you think it means?
Are you kidding me?
What, like I'm I don't open up or something like that.
You're very protected.
You know, one thing that I had written down to switch it really quick and have me ask a question is,
Okay.
when do you think we became such private people?
You and I?
Yeah,
Or just us as adults or what?
us as a couple. You know,
Us as a
and
couple.
adults. I mean, I think that you are much more probably gregarious than me as far as like your everyday schedule. Like when I get in the mix, I can like, you know, I can kind of be, I guess,
Oh, you can turn it on.
I can turn it on for sure. But I feel like the older I get, the more I prefer not to put myself in those situations because I'm a cat. I'm tired.
Yeah, I just want to sleep.
Yeah. Not even that. I don't even sleep that much. I just like my personal time, my alone time.
Well, I've always been like that.
Yeah. Yeah, you have.
I've always been comfortable with spending time with myself.
Mm-hmm.
Ask my mother.
Yeah.
Oh, Carrie's just down in her room by herself.
Watching Frasier.
No, I wouldn't even have Frasier on. Well, now, but wait. So, what was the question?
When do you think that we became such private people? Because when we were younger, we'd always be out. You know, we'd
That
always
was
be at a
you,
party.
not me.
Oh, okay.
I only became more social because of you.
Oh, dang. Okay.
I'm trying to, hook the guy.
Well, it worked.
I did something right. No, I don't know. I don't know how to answer that.
Yeah. Yeah, I didn't know how to answer it either. That's why I wanted to ask you.
We still don't know.
Yeah, we still don't know.
That's why we're in a tiny room talking to each other.
You know what's funny is I set these chairs up so I was actually closer to you than I normally am to guests.
That is so sweet.
I know. That's how much I love you.
I got a cat's approval.
Yeah. This is as close as I'll get to you today.
Yeah, we're not even touching.
Yeah.
I'll see you tonight. Yeah, I don't know. I think that I would say that I wouldn't even say it's private. I'd say it's busy.
Mm-hmm.
And how we allocate our energies towards things like we have work. We don't have kids, but people have kids. I have dance. You have your podcast. Like, there's only so many hours during the day, and whether we like to admit it or not, we just get busy and we get more consumed with things.
Mm-hmm.
And I wouldn't even say that makes us more private. I think we just decide to spend our energy in more conscious way. I don't know.
Yeah. And I think that from a personal perspective, I have gotten better about allocating my time to the things that I personally feel are more important than others. Like, so when I first started Crude, I was just like manic about, I need to get this person's article in. I need to get this person. And I mean, you know how close I was to my phone at all times. Like on the weekends,
yeah, that was ridiculous.
On the weekends, like people would hit me up at ridiculous hours because this was something that they were doing in addition to their job.
Yeah, it'd be like 3 a.m. and your phone's going off. I'm
Yeah.
like, who the fuck is that?
Yeah.
Tell them to fuck off. We're sleeping.
Yeah.
It's Tuesday.
It's Tuesday. But I've gotten much better about it now to the point where, I have a part-time job that doesn't start till noon. And before that, I wake up with you, as you're about to leave for work. And then I edit the podcast or I do, Crude related stuff, if not the podcast, go to work. Then generally I come home and the rest of the day is dedicated to you. And what's funny is the more that I have stuck to that schedule, the more that I feel stupid for not doing that in the first place. You feel like you just waste so much time when you do other things that aren't important, but you think just because of the rat race that is the world, you think that they're more important. And then you get to a certain point and you're like, shit, like the only thing that's really important is family and friends.
Well, I mean, I feel like everybody goes through that stage though, where their priorities get mixed up. So I wouldn't necessarily think of that as like lost time or a bad thing. It's just like one of life's lessons. I mean, just like anything else, it's just like, oh yeah, I was a jerk in high school, or I was a brat as a kid or I was anything.
Are you saying these all about me?
No, I'm just saying in general. Yeah, Cody, you're a horrible human. No, I'm just saying in general. It's like, I mean, we can't always be 100% the best person.
Mm-hmm.
And so I wouldn't say that's a downfall, or not even a downfall. That's not the right word. A failing at that time period. It's just like that was something that you experienced and now you're conscious of it. If you didn't experience it, you wouldn't be conscious of it. So that's not a bad thing. That's actually a good thing. And luckily I was there to tell you you're being a jerk.
Yeah, you're blowing it.
You're blowing it. You're looking at your phone 24/7 and you're not hearing anybody else around you. I mean, the phone that was a different thing. That was a dark age.
You know what I was just thinking is I wonder if I would have been where I am now with this routine that I'm really happy with, like, allocating my time and energy to the things that I think are important, if I wouldn't have like had a totally fucked up routine back then and realized like, okay, those are negative. That's not positive things that don't give back.
Mm-hmm. I do have another question for you.
Okay, go ahead.
What is it that you think is special about what you're bringing to the table, the podcast table?
I think that these long form conversations are really important because they are allowing people to tell their stories like unabridged. So it's not like, when you pick up a newspaper or you're reading like your local news, that narrative that specific journalist is telling, they are using those quotes and those facts to reach a certain endpoint. So it may appear to be objective, but in reality it's not. I mean, nothing is necessarily objective, but I think that having people on the podcast and them telling, exactly their perspective and their position and their experience and their knowledge, it's coming straight from the horse's mouth, and it's not like minced. I'm not taking, a quotable here or there. You're hearing every single thing in context. And I think that especially now with like the divisiveness of news or like the perceived divisiveness of news, I think that type of storytelling and journalism is more important now than ever. Is that a good answer?
No, I'm just thinking like, well, that's like podcasts in general, but I'm asking, what do you bring? Like, what is your special twist? Like, what makes Crude special in the podcast realm? Because podcasts are everywhere. They're really popular.
Yeah, everybody has a podcast.
What are you bringing that's special? I mean, like, I know why podcasts are good. I listen to them all the time.
Mm-hmm.
But what are you bringing that's special?
I think that you've heard me say this a bunch, but I really, really make a point of not steamrolling a guest and not talking over them, letting them finish what they're saying. I really try not to like weirdly redirect the conversation as they're like trying to finish whatever they're saying, which I think so many different podcasters do. They throw themselves too much into the mix. So when I click on a podcast, an interview podcast, I should say, I am clicking on it because of the other person, the guest on that podcast, not because I want to hear, this host. I don't, on episode 1025, I don't need to know any more about the host, like I got it.
Yeah.
I want to hear from the guest.
Yeah. We know you were addicted to drugs and alcohol.
Yeah, we got it, bud. So that I think is something that I bring to the table
Well, that's part of the reason why we're doing this podcast.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Because
you don't put yourself out there.
Yeah.
So this is for all the people who listen to the Crude podcast. Let's find out how neurotic is Cody Liska. And that is actually my next question. How neurotic are you?
How neurotic am I?
Yeah, when it comes to the podcast, like, tell us your process. Like, how do you choose guests? How do you find out about them? How do you contact them? How do you research them? How do you set it up?
So let's see. So starting from how do I pick them, right?
Mm-hmm.
How
do you even find them in the first place?
It's one of those things where like you read books about the process of writers and how they get ideas and things like that. And it can literally come from anywhere, yeah,
well, that can just be like a thought in your brain, but you have to find humans.
Yeah, exactly. But a good example is years ago when I was driving around with you and your mom, you both were talking about, just as an aside, you were like, we were here in Anchorage. I wonder what they do with bodies in the wintertime.
That was in Reno when we were driving up to Tahoe.
Oh, really? Okay,
yeah,
so
we were going through the switchbacks.
Okay, so I remember it. I remember the place incorrectly, but I remember the conversation.
You were still in the back seat.
Yeah, always in the back seat. But the conversation was still, it was still there.
Mm-hmm.
And the conversation was, I wonder what they do with bodies in Alaska in the wintertime.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was like, that's great. Just that premise alone, just that sentence, that question led to that article that I did for Vice about, how to bury a body in the wintertime.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of how it comes about. It could be something like that, or it could be, I'm listening to a podcast and they're talking about, say they're talking about the PFD. And I'm like, I bet I could talk to somebody about the PFD. And so then, I hit up Cliff Grow, who I interviewed about the PFD, who's like just been around since like the permanent fund dividend, like started, and the permanent fund and the permanent fund dividend started. And so he's an advocate for the permanent fund dividend. So I hit him up and was like, would you like to talk? And what's great is more often than not, people are down to talk, which I don't know if that says anything about humanity, that we're just down to talk about ourselves. I mean, listen to me right now.
Oh, yeah. No, everybody loves to talk about themselves. Okay, well, you answered the first part.
What's the second part?
How do you usually contact people? And then how do you go about researching? And then how do you set it up? When do you do them?
I mean, that's all relatively easy. I just Google them.
It's easy.
Okay, so here's the thing: is it seems easy. It seems
we share living
now.
Space, Cody. It's not always easy.
You're right. It's not always easy, but there can be persistence, and there can be like what I think is really in my favor is having like the resume that I do now. And so when
you do now or have now?
The resume that I have now, I will send, having the resume and the past work that I have now, I will send an email and be like, here, I'm a host of a podcast called Crude Conversations. I'll link the Crude Conversations. And so I'll have all this stuff so they can click on it and be like, oh, he's not some wacko.
You have to pitch yourself.
Yeah, it's always pitching yourself for sure.
Well, see, most people probably went, I didn't even know that.
Yeah, I mean, having past work.
I just thought you like called people or emailed them and just said, hey, what's up? I'm Cody Liska. I don't know. I didn't know you linked your like resume.
Not my resume.
Or like your profile.
Apple Podcasts, not my profile. So I'll be like, here, go to the podcast page, or feel free to go to the podcast page and see the other people that I've interviewed in the past. And then so they'll see that and be like, all right, if this person did it, I should do it. So it's not like.
He's not some creep in a garage.
Exactly. Like Mark Maron.
yeah, like Mark Maron. He's literally in a garage.
Yeah, shout out to Mark Maron.
Yeah. If you're listening. Okay, but have you ever had anybody like just flat out say no?
I have, yeah. I actually have recently, but I don't know if I want to put them on blast.
Okay, don't do that. I mean, if they didn't even want to be on your podcast.
Yeah, don't. And they actually weren't that interesting. So so they did me a favor.
No loss.
Yeah, exactly.
I didn't have to spend an hour talking to a boring human.
That was a lapse in judgment.
All right, that's okay. I don't know if I have any more podcast questions.
I have some questions.
Okay.
Okay, so after we've been together for so long, what still makes you excited to be with me?
You're smiling at me.
Well, because you have such a great memory when it comes to this stuff. Like, I'll have to like really think about it because I want it to be like something super specific. But you have like just a Rolodex. You're like, all right, which one do you want?
What do you want?
I don't know. Let's do the most recent.
What's the most recent thing that makes me excited to be with you?
Yeah.
I said it like 2 hours ago.
What was it?
You're still the person who makes me laugh the most.
Oh.
Oh. This podcast has been us laughing. See, we're laughing again. I think that's actually Cody.
Uh-huh.
My honeymoon present to you was a book called To the Person, I can't even remember the wording, but it's like, you will always make me laugh.
Yeah.
That's it.
And it's you enumerating all the reasons you love me.
I'm up to like over 100 things of why I love you.
I know you keep regifting it to me for like my birthday and Christmas.
It's never going away.
Yeah, I love it.
I will always have something to give you because I keep adding to the book that is laying somewhere, not in a very special place.
I know where it is.
Yeah, it's in your
Office. Yeah.
That is not really an office.
Yeah, it's kind of just a room.
Basically another cat bed.
Yeah, it's a room for my baseball caps and the cats.
Yeah. And our washer and dryer.
And all my audio stuff.
Yeah. And your 5 backpacks.
So many backpacks.
And the book that I keep writing reasons why I love you. I actually have some notes on my phone of things I need to write down in there.
In the book.
Yeah, of reasons why I love you.
That's sweet.
You want to know the newest one?
What is it?
It's actually not even that new, but how much you love to mow the lawn.
I do love mowing the lawn.
I know, dude. I watch you from the kitchen and you look so happy mowing the lawn. And even when like the lawnmower's not working, you're just like, fuck. Okay, but at least I know how to fix this. 'Cause you're not a handyman, but you know how to work that lawnmower.
I know that lawnmower inside and out.
Yeah, I crank it, right?
Get some gas.
And I think you just love the tradition that you like go and take a shower right after, and your shoes get all green and grassy. It's one of the reasons why I love you.
I do love mowing the lawn.
Yeah.
You know what's funny is a couple of weeks ago, I came up with a solid piece of relationship advice. And it was kind of like spurred by...
For who? For us?
No.
For somebody else?
Well, let me finish.
Okay.
It was spurred by your mom's advice that she always gives at weddings, which is make time for a date, right? Or have a date once a week.
Night.
Date night.
Mm-hmm.
Which is, I think, super solid. But I was super excited because I was like, I'm going to tell Carrie this. This is my wedding advice that I'm going to give other people.
Yeah.
And my original version was be nice to each other. And I think I thought of that because I think couples forget to do that after a while. They forget to just be nice to each other because they get too caught up in their own bullshit. Your response to that was, and I wrote it down.
Okay, can't wait.
You suggested, which I couldn't help but say was much better.
Okay.
Was remember that you can have fun with each other.
Oh yeah, that is much better.
Much better. And it was like, so I was like, shit. Okay. So, I mean, so that'll be my advice.
So we know who the true writer is.
So why do you think it's important to do that? To remember that you have fun with each other?
Oh, there's a whole lot of reasons. I mean, when you're in a relationship, it's easy to get comfortable and not remember the romance of that relationship and forget to nurture it. And you have to, otherwise, you're just coming home and you're not. It's almost like there's this other human being in the house and it's not even like a person that you love and are excited to see. It's just like another human that's like another reflection of yourself. And you're just like, why didn't you take out the trash?
Mm-hmm.
And it should be like, well, why didn't you take out the trash? Like asking yourself, like, why didn't you just do it?
Mm-hmm.
And, I catch myself doing that.
I think we all do.
Yeah. It's hard not to.
Yeah.
And it's important to take a step back and just like, no, this is a person that's another human being and needs affection and love just like I do. And why did I fall in love with them in the first place? And like I said previously, why did I fall in love with you in the first place? It's because you make me laugh. And so like, just not only remember to have fun with the person you love, but have fun with yourself. And remember, you can have fun. It's so easy to be bogged down with like, oh, I got to pay my bills. I got to go to the doctor. I got to go to the dentist. I got to go to work. I got to do this because that's part of being an adult, which honestly, there's a lot of sucky things that come with being an adult.
Being an adult kind of sucks
Yeah,
sometimes.
no, so I don't know what we were rushing to do when we were kids. I just want to be a kid again.
Yeah.
I'm looking towards being senile at this point.
Doesn't sound too bad to forget.
Yeah. What? Where am I? Who is this? I want to poop.
The baseline.
Yeah.
Pooping.
Showering.
You know, something that happened a few years back that I always bring up when it's like applicable or relevant is, I forget, I mean, you have a better memory for the specifics than I do, but I remember we were super tired and we were just like, we don't have any food at home. Let's go out to eat. We went to Sorrento's, an Italian restaurant here in Anchorage, and we got a seat and we didn't say anything. Like, I think for the longest time in my memory, it's like the whole dinner, we didn't say anything. And we were just completely happy with each other's company. And we were just like happy to be at a restaurant we like, eating the food we like.
Which is so weird because that's so not us.
Yeah, it's not.
And I remember at some point, like maybe this is like 7 years ago, we were just like, what is with those couples that just sit there and they don't say anything?
Mm-hmm.
Like, what is wrong with it? They hate each other. Maybe they were just tired. They just needed some food.
Yeah, because they recently became adults.
They got so many bills to pay.
Yeah, God, I can't afford any of them.
I don't even have health insurance. And then we were like, all of a sudden it clicked and we were like, we get it.
Yeah.
Sometimes you're just so tired and bogged down. You don't want to talk. But that was like, the reason why it sticks out in your mind is because that is not us. So usually we're like talking nonstop.
Yeah.
That's the other thing that's kind of interesting.
About what?
After all these years, we still have so much stuff to talk about.
Yeah, you wake me up in the middle of the night when I'm sleeping and like you're in the middle of a sentence.
I'm like, hey, Cody, get this.
One thing about you that is absolutely, well, it's very cool, but also hilarious in some situations is how vivid and surreal your dreams are to the point where you'll wake up laughing because they're so funny.
Do you want to tell the story?
You can tell it.
I can tell it? Okay. I was having this dream. This was probably, 4 years ago?
Something
3 years
like that,
ago?
yeah.
Something like that. I was having this dream. And I dream every night. I was having this dream where, I don't know, it's like at this, as most dreams, they don't make much sense. And I was like at this party and I crossed this room and I ended up in our bathroom, like our bathroom in our apartment. And I open up Cody's side of the medicine cabinet and he's got all these, which he actually does, has all these cologne sample bottles
that I never use.
He never uses, but he's always got to have them. And he won't throw them away. And I used to prop them up so they're like standing up, which they're like almost impossible to keep standing up. And I open up his side of the medicine cabinet and they're all knocked over. And I shut the medicine cabinet and I like lean over and I look at him with just total contempt. And I say to myself, man, that guy really gets under my skin. And it was just so venomous that I started laughing because it's such a petty thing to be mad about. And I woke myself up, and Cody, you.
Yeah.
I woke myself up laughing, and you're like, what's so funny? And I was in such hysterics. I like could barely get the story out. Just like, I was just so mad at you for something that you didn't even do, but you do it in real life. And it's so petty.
You know what's funny about...
I still have nightmares I have nightmares on top of nightmares.
Yeah. You'll have a nightmare, wake up, go back to bed, have another nightmare.
No, I mean, like, I have nightmares about nightmares I had before.
Wait, like...
Explain.
Oh,
yeah, like, I get, like, all Inception, like, I'll have dreams about me having a dream about a nightmare I had, like, 8 years ago.
Oh, my gosh.
I know, it's
really fucked up, dude.
It's fucking Looney Town in his head.
You might need to talk to somebody.
I know, I'm talking to you. Can you help me?
What do I do?
Can you write me a script? This is Dr. Cody Crude, right?
Yeah. You know, it's funny when you have a funny dream, and kind of the trajectory of your laughing is very funny because like you'll be completely silent, but you'll start shaking. And you'll shake the whole bed, and it'll be like an earthquake is happening.
I'm doing it right now.
Yeah. and then it'll eventually turn into like this audible laughter. But for a second, I'll think like, oh, she's having like, you know, she's twitching in her sleep or something. And then eventually it just turns into this like consistent like rumbling. And then I'll start shaking. And then the cats on the bed will start shaking. And then all of a sudden it'll be audible.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, she's laughing.
Oh, she's broken lid.
Yeah. What kind of dream did she have last night?
What's going on in there?
I only ever have, well, I don't dream, or I dream rarely, but the times that I do, they're so boring. And which is like your mom's dream when she...
Yeah, she's a furniture salesman.
Yeah, your mom had a dream about being a furniture salesman.
Yeah.
And if you know Susie Hambach, and you just picture her as a furniture salesman.
She's the
funniest
worst.
thing. Yeah, and she sucked at. She was so bad in the dream at being a furniture salesman.
Couldn't sell a couch.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
She's gonna love all these shout outs.
Yeah, she is. Do you have any other questions for me, Carrie?
Not off the top of my head.
You know, something that I have written down in here in my phone, because we wanted to hurry up and get to the studio today to do this because we're feeling the magic of this podcast.
Yeah.
Was that, you know, we're in kind of the heart of February. We're getting out of the darkness here in Alaska.
Mm-hmm.
And I wrote this down as just kind of an aside, but I was like, oh, that seems like kind of important because it's totally true. It's one of those like statements that turn into like an epiphany. And it is that you and this podcast have been like my salvation in these dark months.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I thought I'd just tell you that.
No, it wasn't even a question.
No, I know it wasn't a question. It's just a statement. You know, it was just like when you're kind of driving around or you're kind of left your own thoughts, it was like something that popped into my head. Like, what the hell would I be doing without you, first off, and then doing this podcast to occupy my time and kind of feed my soul.
And you forgot the cats.
No, of course the cats. The cats are part of you.
Yeah, that's right. I'm cat lady.
Yeah.
I'm cat bed.
But yeah, I don't know if there's any response to that, but...
Okay, I have a question for you.
Do it.
Who would be somebody would just be like the pinnacle of like the best podcast ever? Like anybody in the world.
You're going to not like my answer.
Okay.
Because it's not...
I like how you're prefacing with that.
Because it's not specific. It's like I've interviewed people.
I need a name. I want a name.
I can't give you a name.
Like you could say like, well, I was going to say Prince, but that's not going to happen.
That's definitely not going to happen. I hate to burst your bubble.
Yeah. That's just wrong.
But without giving a name, because I don't have a name, let me just say this, is that at first I was like, I'm going to, I know enough people that are well known, whether they're snowboarders or whether they're writers or journalists, that I'm going to get this interview and this is going to be the one. You know, this is going to be super exciting and it's going to, you know, be super far reaching. And of course it was great and I had a great time doing it. But then when I do an interview with somebody like local and they have this like really inspiring, courageous story, and then I re-listen to that, I'm like, well, I mean, that's wonderful. That's great. And so I don't really have an answer. Really, I think if I were to answer that question, it would be somebody that's just like the average Joe, you know, like the local sugar man or something like that.
We got to find that guy.
Yeah.
The local sugar man.
Like the documentary.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like how he was just completely unknown for the longest time. And then he finds out that he's just like huge in a different country. He's like the freaking Elvis. Yeah. If I could find that person here and help them tell their story.
You don't think you found that?
I don't know. I don't know if I have. I think I've helped a lot of people tell their stories and I'm super proud of that. But I mean, who am I to say? I don't know. I've had people that contact me like every single week that show their appreciation for this podcast or that podcast or the most recent podcast, which is amazing. And so I just keep doing them.
So what stories interest you the most?
I don't know, probably like the most human ones. One thing that you actually said to me while listening to a podcast, one that you really liked, I think it was Aaron Roberts, the police officer, the retired police officer, the episode 1 of Lost Anchorage. And you stood up. You did this a couple times, but one specific time you stood up and you're like, why do people talk to you? Why are they? And it wasn't a mean question. You weren't being mean at all. You were just like, these people are strangers and you're another stranger.
Yeah.
And they're just like bearing their soul.
No, that's a very weird thing. Like if somebody were just to come up to me and ask me like, talk to me and bare your soul and have it online, I'll be like, what?
Yeah.
Why? What do you want from me? Like my guard would be up, but you seem to have this disarming quality.
Yeah, I don't know. I think I do have that quality, and I see that quality in other people. Like my dad has that quality. Like people will just talk to him.
Yeah, he does.
And he'll talk to them back.
I feel like it's like an approval thing though.
What do you mean?
Like people who are trying to seek approval from others. They're just like willing to like show everything they got. Maybe.
I think that there's a lot of different answers to that.
And I'm not saying that's for everybody who is willing to talk to you. That's not my point. I'm just saying I'm saying this as a general statement. Like, when you're like feeling needy, you're just like getting more. I'm totally going off on a tangent now, so let's just stop it there.
Well, I think maybe how I interpret it is that you'll have somebody like, say, the retired police officer that we talked about earlier. Like I reached out to him. I was kind of co-signed by a mutual friend of ours. And she was like, he's good. Like you can talk to him.
I really liked his. And
so he was kind of given the okay by this mutual trusted friend of ours. And so that was a different situation. So every situation is totally different. But I think, and I'm not speaking for him at all, but if I was in his position, or if I was, say, however many years down the line, and somebody for some reason decides like, hey, I want to get him on a podcast or whatever the hell it looks like, some hologram, whatever like the new media is going to be, like 20 years, 30 years. And they're like, I want to get Cody Liska on the podcast. The way that I would look at it is, I've kind of ran my course in a career, and now it'll be fun to talk about it. So if you were a police officer and you aren't allowed to talk about a lot of things because there are so many different ongoing cases, it might be really fun to talk about all that stuff, even if it is in the abstract, like after the fact, after you're done with all that stuff. You see it with like ex-mobsters and stuff like that, or even mobsters that are in the now like in the prison system. Now they're like willing to talk, right?
Well, they've had time to digest it, and they're kind of in the fuck it mode.
Yeah, exactly.
I do have another question that I know the answer to.
Okay.
but maybe your listeners would like to hear, is how long does it take you to edit a single podcast? We're getting a glimpse into the life of Cody.
The cat life of Cody Liska.
Cody Catman.
Anywhere between, let's say, 4 to like 6 hours to edit them.
And that's every week.
Yeah, that's every single week.
So you go to work, you edit before work, and
Mhm.
you edit after work.
Sometimes I edit after work. Generally, I try not to edit after work.
Cody.
Generally, I really try not to. But sometimes I'll do it like maybe on a Monday. If I'm making a lot of progress in the morning, I'm like, oh, I should get to this point in the afternoon. And especially if you have dance, you know, I'll be like, oh, well, I mean, what am I going to do? Just watch a movie? And then again, there's my neuroses kicking in. I'll be sitting there watching a movie, trying to enjoy myself, but I just can't.
Yeah,
Right? Because
you're
I'm
like, I should be editing.
yeah, exactly. And it's just like picking at
So
me.
you're, in a sense, you're kind of a workaholic.
Yeah. I think that goes for anything that I try to do. Like I just throw myself fully into it. You know, with Crude, when it was just the magazine, what I was doing, and I think the third issue, the one about like that focused on like the local hip hop rap / like urban culture.
Mm-hmm.
That one was specifically, I think, rough because I was like, all right, I need to immersion journalism. I need to just immerse myself in these cultures and everything.
That was a rough magazine.
Yeah, that was a really tough issue. Just because
For
of like
both of us.
just because of just the all-nighters and then some of the element that kind of all-night atmosphere brought in. But then I did an article, weirdly enough, another article for Vice, like just the only two that I did are being brought up. But the other article was about the hip hop scene here. And for that article, I just interviewed people. I didn't have to put myself in like harm's way. I just had to be a good interviewer.
Mm-hmm.
And then I kind of looked at those two pieces side by side, like the issue and then that article. And I'm like, the article to me is just as good,
Mm-hmm.
if not better than the issue, because then I just focused on like the story rather than like my mental health with the other one. Right.
Yeah.
And so that's something that I learned too. It's like, just be a good interviewer and be able to, I don't know, ask the right questions.
So if present Cody could talk to, was it 2013
13. Yeah.
that you started the magazine?
Yeah.
What would be his advice to 2013 Cody?
Just walk away.
Give up.
Give up. That's what Jerry said.
Why don't you just give up?
You know, I don't know if I could tell myself anything.
Well, yeah.
I think that I would be just too stubborn, and
You're still too stubborn.
yeah, but I think that
You
I'm
could
more...
have like 68-year-old Cody come from the future and you just be like, fuck you, old man.
I think I'm more receptive of it now. I think the older I get, the more receptive I am to it, and the more I know about myself because of like self-analysis and things like that.
What would you suggest? Like, just skip the magazine, stop trying to print, go to podcasts?
You mean in the beginning?
Yeah.
Oh, no, I couldn't have done that.
You couldn't do podcasts?
No, because I think that, you know, a lot of times before I did an interview, because probably like imposter syndrome or my own like perceived inadequacies, I'd be like, I'm talking to this person, and I'd kind of get spun out. And so I'd have a few beers, you know, and I'd drink before I would do work. And then the longer you do that, the more that those things become intertwined, and you can't do the thing without, you know, having a drink or something like that. And so I had to like, even like the first podcast, you know, like a first Crude Conversations, first couple episodes, I would like have a few beers, you know, during or whatever. And I think that the podcast definitely suffered because of it. And then since then,
Well, you were
like,
also brand new.
yeah, and brand new, and I was trying to figure
Didn't know
everything
what
out.
you were doing.
Yeah, it was an uphill battle.
Yeah.
And so
So let's just throw some beer in there.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, this will fix it.
Yeah, this will help.
And so
Dull the senses.
I don't do that anymore. I don't have anything to drink in the podcasts at all.
Coffee.
Well, yeah, coffee and water. I'm looking at coffee, Cody.
I'm looking at it right now.
So yeah, that's something that I think would be a big mark against me if I just jumped right into podcasting. I would have just been like this drunken mess in 2013.
It's all recorded.
Yeah, exactly.
It's out there for your listening delight.
Yeah. So I don't think I could have done that.
I don't know. Maybe you would have gotten like wise to it sooner.
Maybe.
I mean, everything's a learning process, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
you didn't know how to put a magazine together. And you someone
Well, that was thanks to Sebastian Garber.
Yeah.
You know, Sebastian
Yeah.
helped out with the magazine and the layout and everything. And he,
Had he worked on magazines before?
He worked in graphic design. I'm sure, he had some knowledge.
Yeah,
That's what
he
went to
helped
school
with
for.
graphic designs. But I mean, I'm talking about like the binding and the size and cost and distribution and
I'm
all
sure-
that. I mean,
I'm sure
there
he
was
knew some
so
stuff.
much behind it that is like, oh yeah, I want to put a magazine out there, but
Yeah.
you don't know all these pitfalls that are associated with it until you do it.
You remember how much time I spent finding paper, the type of paper that I liked?
Yeah, I remember you giving me paper and you're like, what do you think feels better?
Yeah.
And I was like, I don't know. It's paper.
Yeah. I'm like, oh, well, this is matte white, You're like, oh, what the hell are you talking about?
Yeah, you had like a whole book on paper.
Yeah. Can I throw this piece of paper away? Don't touch it.
Yeah, don't touch that piece of paper. I'm still feeling it.
Yeah.
Well, the cat's pissed on it. What do you want?
It's okay. I can still feel it.
Oh, and you had me looking at fonts and spacing.
Yeah.
There's a ton of things that go behind anything creative.
Mm-hmm.
But putting a magazine together was a whole new experience for
It's
both
insane.
of us. I feel like that magazine's also like there's a bit of me in there because I had to listen to all of your neuroses going on in your head.
Well, that's why you've always been in the masthead as the managing editor.
Yes.
Because you're managing the editor.
Yes, I am managing the editor.
And honestly, I mean, that's a joke, that you're managing the editor because, I mean, I run everything by you. You've read every single one of my drafts of every single one of my articles before they come out. You have less of a hand in the podcast, like editing process, just because it's like such a personal thing sitting there in front of a computer on audition. But like if I'm interviewing somebody, you'll definitely suggest questions.
Oh yeah, I suggest questions and I tell you what I like and don't like about certain podcasts that you do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When I think it's always it's a work in progress. So like what I was kind of mentioning earlier is re-listening to podcasts, which is, I do that all the time. I'm constantly re-listening to certain podcasts and
Your own.
yeah, my own podcast, just to be like, all right, I could have shut up there quicker. I could have gotten that question out quicker. I could, kind of this constant improvement, or on a positive note, like, oh, I really like what I did there.
Mm-hmm.
I liked how I asked that question in a different way, because one thing that I'm like super hyper conscious of, or one thing that I'm hyper conscious of is how I ask the question. And one thing that I notice I say a lot is so,
Yeah, you do.
Yeah. And it's because I hear it in other podcasters now that like I'm hyper conscious of it, and it doesn't bug me when they do it. But obviously I'm going to be hypercritical of myself.
Yeah. Well, that's natural.
Yeah. One thing that I have a star next to here on my phone in my notes
Uh-huh.
is when we were kids, your confidence was always so intimidating to me.
My confidence.
Yeah.
Yes, I've actually heard this from several people.
When I was younger, I wrote down that you had this comfort in certitude. And for some reason, it's always stuck with me. Like when you think of, say, your stance on something or your opinion on something, you didn't just blurt it out. There has been like this methodical, pros and cons list that comes along with that perspective
Mm-hmm.
that I've always appreciated.
Are you just saying that, or you wanting me to like expand on it?
I'm just trying to give you compliments, Dave.
I like it.
Yeah.
I don't know. I guess maybe it goes to all those hours I spent in solitude. I put a lot of thought into things.
Yeah.
So I already have a answer in the shotgun. So when it shoots out my mouth, I put some thought into it.
Let's see. Do you have any other questions for me?
Off the top of my head. I mean, do you want to talk more about the podcast? What do you want to talk about?
It's up to you. I mean, you're the one who brought it to my attention that I don't divulge a lot of like personal stuff in the podcast, which was kind of like the inception of this podcast.
Mm-hmm.
So if you were a listener, what else would you want to know about me?
What's your coffee?
My coffee?
Mm-hmm.
Right now it's a latte that we got. We got lattes from Pilates, but usually it's just black coffee with like cream in it.
Mm-hmm. It's fascinating.
Yeah, no, it's mind blowing.
It's mind blowing.
Let's see.
I have a question.
Okay, go ahead.
Why do you like mowing the lawn so much?
You know what's funny is me and Mike Dempsey have talked about this before.
Oh my god.
Yeah, because he had a landscaping.
This just got better than I thought. It was such a dumb question.
Because he had a landscaping job years ago, like during the summertime
Yeah, I
here in
remember.
Anchorage, and we just geeked out about how much we liked mowing the lawn, and just like because it's what's a good way to put this? It's you can turn your brain off. You know, you're just doing straight lines and you're just listening to music.
So
and
why don't you like to vacuum?
because it scares the cats.
No.
No. I actually don't have anything wrong with vacuuming. I just, when I tell you that I don't think of certain things, they just don't enter my mind. That's one of them.
Vacuuming.
Yeah.
But when you look out the kitchen window and you see that lawn and grass is just a little too long.
Yeah. It's just purring for me.
Okay, so you like mowing the lawn because you can turn your brain off and you make straight lines. This is what you're telling me.
Yeah.
Okay. I guess I can deal with that.
I think that's pretty much it, Carrie, unless you had any other questions.
What's your favorite thing about me?
My favorite thing about you?
Mm-hmm. Other than the fact that I wake myself up laughing.
Well, do you want it to be something kind of goofy and frivolous, or do you want it to be like something like super, like a characteristic that I really admire about you?
Ugh, I don't want admiration. Let's go goofy and frivolous.
Goofy and frivolous.
Yes. See, I need my own book. Like Reasons Why You Love Your Wife.
Okay.
I've started my book on you. I've got you beat.
Are you shaming me right now?
I am.
Okay, so maybe that's what I need to do.
Yeah.
Start a book.
You need to go to Barnes & Noble, go pick up a notebook, and start writing down the reasons why you love me.
So let's see. You know what I really love is traveling with you.
Oh, yeah, we're good at that.
We're really good at traveling together. And I think we've always been good about it, but it became really obvious when we went to Europe the first time. And we were just like, really, we're on the same exact page.
Oh, yeah. We're good travelers.
Yeah.
Was it in France, or was it when we were the first time we went to Europe, where we're like, this is what all couples should do. It's like, can you get from point A to point B and cross the country in which you don't speak the same language, and see if you get in a fight?
With half a bottle of water.
Yeah, half a bottle.
Yeah, that was in France. That was back in April.
Okay.
When we were traveling together, and it was like this, it required teamwork.
Yeah.
Because we didn't speak the language, and we were trying to travel all over the country.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's another piece of advice for couples if you're listening is
See if you travel well.
see if you travel well.
When
Yeah.
all you have is the person that you're with to talk to, because you don't speak the language. You didn't bother to learn it.
Well, we tried to
Oh, I know. I tried to learn French.
with your CD in your car.
Yeah, I was like speaking French in my car for like 3 months, and I didn't use a single word of it.
Yeah, it's
except
tough.
for parlez-vous anglais?
Yeah. Are you hungry?
No.
I'm kind of hungry. Maybe we should go get something to eat.
Where do you want to go?
I don't know. But I think this is good. We're good. Okay, I love you, Carrie.
I love you too.
For more information about how you can support local grassroots journalism, go to www.patreon.com/Crude Magazine. Crude Conversations is written, hosted, and produced by me, Cody Liska, for Crude Magazine. Music was produced by Alcoda Beats.